Well, greetings, salutations, everyone. Just trying to position myself decently here. Show off my son's gear. Yeah. Los Sons de Phoenix. Make sure that I get this tossed out proper on the YouTubies, all of the socials and such. And obviously, I'm going to give everybody just a few minutes to filter in. Okay, come on. Where are you at? Where are you at, Linky? Okay, there we go. Cool. Sorry, I did this 3 free months of YouTube Premium. So the YouTube without ads, which is like a very foreign concept for me, is YouTube without ads. It's kind of crazy. I would never spend the $15 a month or whatever the hell it is they actually charge for it. But hey, at least for the time being, I will certainly take according advantage. And just jump into the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group and also toss this link out there. And this is going to be a very fun discussion going an hour later today. So I know this show typically is at 3 p.m. Pacific. And yeah, we went through. And so here in Arizona, it's very strange. We don't do the daylight savings thing. And so typically this show would have been at 4 o'clock afternoon, p.m. My time. But I was like, let's just get it back to 1900 hours, because I always thought that was like a cool, nice, definitive spot to place it. So just get this link in there. And then we will get this show on the road as peeps start filtering in. Yeah, it's 5 o'clock, at least 5 o'clock my time, 4 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. We're so strange here in Arizona. Swear to God, the deadly desert, as I always call it. Okay, so that is shared. See if anybody is filtering in. Silver Shamrock. Oh, sure. Why the hell not? We are a month removed now, but I'm just going to go a little bit closer. Come closer. Come closer. That's too close. Okay. So yeah, LISEY'S story, man. Yeah, this bastard. I'm very excited for some discussage with regards to that. Others are filtering in. What is up, everything horror? ¿Qué pasó? ¿Qué onda? All that good stuff. Happy Tower Tuesday, as I like to say. So, okay, I'm going to close that window out. Make sure everything is all copacetic. You just don't get it. Keep it copacetic. You learn to expect, you're so pathetic. And I picked 2 level today just for you and Marsha. Hey, Fuego, says Richard Forrest. What is going? Happy to be here with all of y'all. Got my Gandalf goblets, and yeah. Gonna give it just a few additional minutos. I hope everybody's commencement of Christmas month is going particularly well, at least thus far. Mine has been okay. Not too shabby, No complaints, never helps my cause. Something that took me a number of years to really properly determine, but there's a lot of truth to that sentiment. And yeah, a few pages of notes here in the Fuego booklet. And so, yeah, everybody, if you were stopping in, I am insanely appreciative, whether this is for the live broadcast here or if you were just checking it out after the fact. I actually got this book this year, have yet to read it, should probably finally do that soon. It's a very interesting one in the fact that, yeah, Richard, it's one that upon my first reading, I was a little ho-hum on. Well, I'll definitely get to it in more according fashion, but this first reread of it, I found myself appreciating it significantly more. And I think that was most notably because of that Apple TV Plus series that King scripted earlier this year with Clive Owen and Julianne Moore, which was exceptional in my estimation. How about them Suns? Oh, well, of course. That's why I'm rocking it. Yeah, sadly, that 18-game win streak came to an end. It has to happen eventually, and on a back-to-back, against probably as good, if not the better team, former, multi-time MVP and Steph Curry, and also with not having their best player. The Suns were at a major disadvantage, and I did not go in with any expectations of them winning that game against the Warriors, so I'm not I'm not tripping. And they pulled it out against their arch rival or former arch rival Spurs the other day. But okay. Well, I know in the month of December it is often a little bit more difficult, but we've been live for 5 minutes now, so I guess I'm just gonna get the preamble of sorts going, and hopefully we will see some more peeps filtering in, and so on and so forth. So, all right, guys, let's do it. Long days and pleasant nights, fellow travelers along the path of the beam. I am known on this level of the tower as Jaime and Fuego, and if it please you, join me here for a bit of palaver on Hail to Stephen King. That's right. This awesome flag that I have behind me, courtesy of none other than Mr. Andrew Mercer in the Slipknot font, which just amuses me every time I look back at it on the slightly revised set. But yes. Welcome to the horror show. Bienvenidos, and so very happy to have you here for some discussion about my favorite author. This is a live show that we do at the beginning of every new month, and it's usually coinciding with an anniversary of some sort. And in this case, for my favorite author, it is none other than LISEY'S story. Yes, and it is pronounced Lisey, as in, like I was saying LISEY'S story for the longest time, and but that is definitely not appropriate. Just like I was mispronouncing King's wife's name for a while, and yes, I know it's Tabby, and then Tabitha, and this book is none other than a major dedication to her specifically. And I just love this hardcover. The cool thing about it is you see with that very instrumental shovel, which is used a couple different times in this story. But I love how when you pull the dust jacket off of this biatch, you have just all of this awesomeness going on. Yeah, baby love, and just the colorfulness of booyah moon. But it's a place that is just, I don't know, a realm of the immenseness of imagination. And this is a book that, especially upon my reread of it, it impressed me significantly more, because beforehand I was like, okay, because this is only my second time reading it. Now, granted, this month, as I do anytime there is a book of the month, I will read the text specifically early in the month, and then later on I go through and I do the audiobook thing. And the audiobook for this one was read by none other than Mare Winningham. And that woman does a very solid job, especially with, some of all of the internalization, and just getting that sort of vulnerability that is such a key to LISEY. But, especially when she does veer into those moments of rage or those moments of just longing and just rumination upon the loss of her love, she really, really gets a lot of that emotion across pretty impressively. And so, yes, I read it at the beginning of the month, listen to it at the end of the month. That is always the tactic for these Hail to Stephen King books of the month. And yeah, I must admit that I gotta give some credit to the Apple TV Plus series, because of the fact that that was adapted earlier this year with J.J. Abrams producing and Sai King scripting all of the episodes himself. There is a little bit of trepidation about him doing that, because whereas, for every Storm of the Century and oh goodness, what else? I'll name a movie, Pet Sematary, the original one. Then there is also stuff like, The Langoliers. I think he penned the scripts for that himself, and a few other films that just didn't really translate quite well. And so I did a whole video about a year or two ago where I was discussing the fact that should Sai King actually be adapting his own stuff, or should he just, as he talks about in an interview, which is at the very end of the audiobook, it didn't used to be there, but it's there now. And it's him doing just a compare and contrast of both the book and how he approached the series and what he tried to alter and so on and so forth. But he's like, I personally look at my adaptations as something along the lines of, you send your kid off to college and, you hope that you instilled that sort of discipline and that sort of just solid character within them. And you're like, well, there you go off into the world, hoping for the best and that sort of situation. And so, yeah, I can see that mentality being a good one to approach with just licensing and allowing the options for people to adapt his work. But if he is personally involved with it, and this was the case, with the Apple TV Plus series, he's like, Tabby, if anybody's going to muck it up, it's going to be me. And so that was the way that he approached it. And so if you want to hear thoughts on the Apple TV Plus series, I'm not really going to be referencing it incredibly much. This is very much about the original book, which was published October, 24th of 2006. So it just a little over a month ago found its 15th anniversary being celebrated, which is pretty cool. It was very congested with some of these golden anniversary sort of situations here in the back half of 2021. And so they have been spaced usually within a month of, the actual monthly release as far as the coverage here goes. And so I got to say, the Apple TV Plus series definitely made me appreciate just the sweetness of this. And yes, there are aspects that I think that they improved upon in the series. And King said that with those episodes and with his approach to it, especially being over a decade removed, that he saw things that he wanted to trim. He saw things that he wanted to augment upon. And so if you want to see myself and Marsha Parker giving our thoughts on the Apple TV Plus series, that is here in the Stephen King focused episodes playlist, which we have here on the Horror Show. But we're talking the book proper today. Yeah, baby love. We are talking Lisey, the Smuckins story. And at the core of this, it is most definitely a love story, hence the dedication to Sai King's wife and the sweetness with regards to that. But it is also, besides being a rumination on grief and loss and also repression of memory, which is a big thing earlier in this book. And this is going to be pretty spoiler heavy, everybody. So just bear that in mind if you have yet to read this, and if you intend to, and if you don't want to have stuff that divulged, which would kind of lessen the literary process for you, then come back after you have actually read this thing proper. But yeah, it was a very faithful television adaptation. But at the core of it, with regards to this book, it is also a celebration of creativity. And also King just, some would say, going back to the well about obsessive fandom. And yes, he's done it countless times. He would do it after this with something like Finders Keepers. He had also done it previously with Secret Window, Secret Garden, and even to a lesser degree with Misery. Misery was about obsessive fandom. Secret Window, Secret Garden, obviously being about you stole my idea and you stole my story and all that. So I think with most of the times that he has kind of focused upon this sort of topic, he has given a different sort of spin on it. But if he continues revisiting it, I think it's less about going back to the well, and it's more so about the fact that as like one of the best-selling authors of all time and currently alive, this is something he probably deals with a lot, man. And so that's why it's still heavy on his heart. That's why he still wants to tackle this topic and wants to just take a different viewpoint of it. So this is, as you get with a lot of sober King writing, this is very nuanced in the extent of things that are going on, because it is a celebration of lasting love. It is also just kind of peering into what life is like if you lose that lasting love. There is a line, and I don't think I put this in my notes, I just jotted it down here on my phone when I was listening to the book, but I thought it was really interesting, where King says in the book, "How lucky do you have to be for your love to outrace your time?" And that's really poignant, in my opinion, because as a hopeless romantic myself, the reason this book spoke to me so significantly, that the first time in portions it did, but much more so in this second reading, and then also after seeing the TV series, is because of the fact that I think that there is this inherent, more modernistic approach where, people are just willing to give up on the dedication that is associated with that. So like if you fall truly, madly, deeply, like the Savage Garden shit, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and it's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be puppy dogs and ice cream. And so for that point, like, I find that quote so insightful and so interesting, because there are a lot of people who their love doesn't last the amount of their time here on this earth, in this plane of existence, on this level of the tower, as I always like to say. And so for those who are able to actually savor that and enjoy that, and I will admit that I know there's a lot of people out there who are gaff about that being a part of their lives and their journey along the path of the beam. They don't really care. They would prefer to focus upon career. They would prefer to focus on, I don't know, just being hedonistic and just bang, 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 whatever, as many as possible, whatever. But for me, at least personally, and as I say, art is always subjective. However you live your life, if you are not that sort of person who puts a high premium upon that sort of thing, as long as you're not just breaking hearts and being a piece of shit or whatever, because I know there's a lot of people who they swang, they don't like, they are very loose with their relational approach and stuff. Hey, respect. As long as you're not, physically or emotionally abusing and hurting someone, live your life however the hell you want. That's the approach that I've always taken. But the reason this book spoke to me was because of the depth and just the breadth of the love between Scott Landon and his wife Lacey. And also the fact that, yeah, she was somebody who, I don't want to say he plucked her out of obscurity, but he was the epitome of her knight in shining armor in a lot of ways. However, he was flawed himself, as you find out, and he had demons, and I think some of the most creative people on this planet, they really wrestle with that imperfection, and there is that internal struggle of sorts. And I find it very fascinating in the way that King approaches it here in one of the most pivotal lines that comes up, over and over and over, where Scott says, he's like, you saved me, and talking about her, and like he was hot and she brought him ice, and, how out of the depths of darkness with not just, and I know that negative experiences can and do often fuel creativity. And so it's a big thing here, Scott with the abusive upbringing, but yet all of the additional supernaturally kind of factors which you get in this sort of Sai King story. I find it just very fascinating. And so, as I always do with these, I like to give some preamble introduction and then throw it to all of you guys in the live chat. If you have a particular moment in this book, a particular line that really just profoundly affected you, spoke to you, intrigued you, or aspects of this particular story that you found were lacking or too much of a retread, because there's pacing issues in the middle of this book. I will definitely agree. And some of the other criticism that I have seen is some of the structuring, with the fact that we do in certain scenes jump from flashback to what is currently transpiring, especially once Lacey finds out, just when her repressed memories give way and she remembers Booyah Moon, booyah, and she figures out her way to go back, but then she is also recalling the previous time she had gone there herself, trying to rescue Scott. And so I have seen people say the structuring of this is a little bit jarring. And I've also seen some peeps with like the fact that, every marriage has its own language. And I wouldn't even say just every marriage, like every sort of relationship that, whether it's romantic or whether it's a friendship, you have your own inside jokes. You have your own silly stuff that only the two of you, will actually laugh about. And I mean, even with Lady Catherine, I have jokes and just dumb quotes and shit that we have experienced, whether it was, watching a TV show or some dumb thing on YouTube or whatever the hell. And you throw that stuff out there, or if you're just making up your own language in general, which is, what King kind of does in this. Like there's one acronym in particular in this, and I'm trying to remember what exactly it is. The Sawesa or whatever it is, Sausa, whatever, where it's like strap on whatever seems appropriate. And it's just basically like a rallying cry of, you need to just put on your big girl boots or whatever in Lacey's case, and just, be undaunted and unafraid of when you have to rise to the occasion and when you have to just stick to it. And so, yeah, I love the exploration of that in this, and just the very sentimental, personal aspect of what, both any sort of relationship, as I said, there's always going to be inside jokes and just inside memories and particular things that the two of you have constructed together with your cohesion, with your personal experiences together that are unique to you. And that's what makes life so awesome. It's the fact that we get the opportunity to forge those sort of things and experience those unique sort of settings and situations. And so there's your preamble, Fuego. I'm going to jump back to the chat and see who else has joined the proceedings. So let's see who else has jumped on. Movie Mike, Even Fuego, and chat. Hello, Constant Reader. Man, time flies. Oh, dang, Lou, what is up, buddy? I hope you're doing well. Lou and I are still planning to get together for discussion. I'm hoping by the end of the year. We talked passingly about it a couple of months ago between family health issues and just the craziness of the last couple of months. We have not been able to nail down a particular time, but the Stephen King podcast, which is what Lou Sitzma has been doing for a long time, definitely check it out, guys. We had a great panel together, and I need to send you a Twitter message, good sir, so we can see how your holidays are looking and if we can get something together proper. I'm really curious about your thoughts. If this is one that you think in his later works is solid, Lou, or if you think it's a little more just kind of retread by the books, haha, sort of situation. Okay, what else do we got? He says, series started slow but finished strong. The back half was really good. Oh, yeah, and Lou's talking specifically about the Apple TV Plus series. And yeah, from a visual standpoint, like some of the early writing, I felt like the augmentation was a bit much. I like the addition of the other sister, not Amanda. Her name it's something with a D. Her name is evading me, but it was the character who was played by girl from Fast Times. And they expanded on Dahlia Ted. God damn it, I can't remember it. But yeah, so the fact that they omitted the other sisters and they just parodied it down to the three of them. And I liked the expansion of Dooley. I thought Dane DeHaan was damn good in that role. And the fact that they actually gave you a little bit more of an understanding of his pathos and just how his creepy, fucked up brain worked. I thought he was terrific. And also the last thing that I will say about the Apple TV Plus series, unless there's like a really consequential comparison, I guess, is what the Long Boy, I think is what it was called, if I recall correctly. That the way King described the creature in the book, the way they brought it to life, in this other world, this big crazed creature, which Scott is just terrified of and is under the impression can, like, once it gets a whiff of you or like its sight on you, you're never really truly free. And there's always that dangerous possibility dwelling on the horizon. I thought the way they visualized that on the Apple TV Plus show, like the set design, the costuming, the ambiance, the way it was shot, it's one of my favorite Cy King adaptations in recent memory. Really is. Taking a cue from my buddy Mike's book reviews with the sipping from the coffee cup. Okay, so who else we got here? Calvin Lawrence is giving the thumbs up. Hey, I appreciate the hell out of that. One of the weaker King books for me. Too much baby love and too much blood bool to the point I found it irritating. For me, the series was better. Not one I'll be returning to anytime soon. And Carl, that's very interesting because even as much as I appreciated this book significantly more upon this reread, I think that King did improve upon it with the series. I feel like the fact that you could see the visuals of this crazy alternate place and the beauty and the majesty of, the Sweetheart Woods and the Sweetheart Trees and the Fairy Forest, and even the way they did the pool and like almost that like outdoor Coliseum-y type area with everybody like wrapped in the bandages and stuff. I don't know. I thought that from a visual standpoint specifically, they significantly succeeded with the Apple TV Plus series. So, okay. JP says, Fuego! JP! I am technically a JP, as y'all may or may not know. Okay, so Lou says, loved it. Great bookend to Bag of Bones. And Bag of Bones is where I have a differing opinion in that particular regard. But still, and that's one that I think I am up for. No, that's right. I'm going to be revisiting the mini series very soon. So that's another one. Mick Garrison, I believe Cy King also penned the script for that one too. So, okay, this is a name that I had not seen. We have Supernatural Slytherin. Dig the hell out of that name. That's really awesome. So I absolutely love Lisi's story, and I have a tattoo sleeve started on my left arm, and I'm planning on getting the shovel done in a cool way. So that just makes me wonder, like, because on the paperback, which is what I pulled for the thumbnail of this, it's the shovel in the snow, but then on the hardcover, you've got the shovel, and we all know the significance of the shovel, and her essentially from what the guy's name was Cole, who shoots Scott in that one particular spot when they're in Nashville, if I remember correctly, where he's doing the groundbreaking and stuff. But I think just if your sleeve is consisting of all of this coolness, like that is gangster, and I have like the most immense amount of respect if that's the route that you're going, especially to sleeve it up. I have met so many, most notably a lot of my like friends that are women, especially those that I've had palaver with that are big Sai King fans, constant readers, Tower junkies, whatever. I know a lot of them that are really, really into Lisi's story. And I think, especially with the way that there's not really a lot of positive male characters in this book. There's like none. I mean, I guess you get the deputy who's hanging out outside of the house and chilling. And I do like the fact that this is another one where King has a shit ton of Easter eggs in the fact that we get to the Castle County Sheriff Norris Ridgwick, who succeeded Alan Pangborn, which is cool. And you also get Cutterback. I'm trying to remember his name. Clutterbuck. That's right. Andy Clutterbuck, who was also in Needful Things along with Norris and along with Pangborn and stuff. So that's cool. You get some dairy references. They've referenced the Mellow Tiger, which was the bar in Castle Rock and stuff. So yeah, you've got King returning at least a little bit, dipping his toe back into that proverbial pool, so to speak, which is pretty cool. So I liked all of those in references and whatnot. So that was dope. Okay, what else we got? The sleeve is of Stephen King. So far, I have a Dark Tower piece and a Ed piece. Okay, so that's where I was curious. So the shovel is just going to join the references to all of these other pivotal covers and stuff. So okay, that's pretty rad. Okay, this is another name. Jim, what is it? Jim Curris says, is this book similar to Bag of Bones? And what are your thoughts on which book you prefer between the two? Well, Jim, they definitely have similar themes about lost love and a lost deep love, except they're basically like bookends, as Lou from the Stephen King podcast said, because one is from the perspective of a man who has lost his wife, and then this one is obviously from the perspective of a woman who has lost her husband, and so the gender dynamic does add some differing flavor. I appreciate the fact, in comparison with this book, that Lisi is still so deeply devout, almost at the age of 50, I think she's supposed to be in this. 25 years of marriage, husband's been dead 2 years, and she's not out like Tommy from Bag of Bones, Mike Noonan, I think is his name, if I remember correctly. But, where guy in Bag of Bones is trying to get all diddly with the young girl and stuff, who has the kid. I'm glad about the fact that Lisi was still in such a moment of grief where she wasn't susceptible. And there's like no characters really making any advances anyway. Like she has like a half-handed joke here or there about she's talking with one of the guys from the sheriff's department, and I think she's internalizing and thinking, if I remember correctly, and she's like, oh, on a bet, like who had to call and ask me on a date. But it's not a situation where there's anything romantic going on with her and a new person after the loss of the love of her life. Like, she's still dedicated, and she is still sad, and she's still grieving. She has not moved on, and kind of gives the impression that she's not sure if she wants to, at least at that particular point. She's not sure if she can. I am not a fan of Bag of Bones. I find merits within it, especially the subplot with the jazz singer and all of that. But as far as, the child custody issues that are explored, and the evil Mr. Burnsy type of character who is our main villain, who is the father-in-law of the girl that our author is trying to help in that, or our main character. I'm trying to remember if he's an author, but since that's a book that I do not ruminate on particularly much, I've read it 3 times over the years and still can't get into it, man. I mean, that and Dreamcatcher being Bag of Bones. Bag of Bones and Dreamcatcher, as I've talked about here on this program previously, are my two least favorite Sai King books. That doesn't mean that I can't find merit in aspects of it, but as I always say, art is subjective. I know Lou is a huge fan of Bag of Bones. I have a lot of friends that love Bag of Bones. We'd want a Bram Stoker award for God's sake. So yes, I see similar DNA from that, the perspective of the loss of a spouse that you loved immensely in Lisey's story and in Bag of Bones. But as far as a preference, I wouldn't go as far as saying I love Lisey's story, but I prefer Lisey's story like 10 times more than Bag of Bones. So yeah, there you have it. Okay, the hardcover is the one in Thanks. Yeah, awesome, very cool. Okay, so just to get into a few other things about this. So yes, baby love, and just the sweetness of the relationship amongst the two of them, and the fact that we have the wife of this famous author who is still grieving, and there is a spark that kind of transpires. It's two different things, really. So I believe she is the oldest sister in Amanda, if I remember correctly. And so Lisey's older sister, Amanda, she is helping with the clearing out of like this whole work area with the jumbo, whatever, like the huge desk that her husband, Scott Landon, did all of this work on. And so he was incredibly famous. He had a brush with death 10 years before the book takes place in 1996, where an obsessive fan by the name of Cole came and shot him, and Lisey saved his life with that Hubble smashness and stuff. And yeah, Landon's heal fast, as he talks about a few different times within this book. And so he is able to recover from the gunshot wound, and she gets 8 more, seemingly very glorious, tender years with her famous husband. And he has a little bit of a dark side, though, and a dark past from the upbringing, the abusiveness of a father, also the tragic death of his brother, Paul, if I remember correctly. And so, yeah, there's kind of, I wouldn't say skeletons in the closet with this famous author, Scott Landon, but there was definitely a lot of pain and a lot of trauma that he used to help fuel his creativity, going and dipping into that proverbial pool, as he talks about at his speaking engagements for where he draws his inspiration. And, something that King said in the interview where he was talking about the Apple TV Plus series, which I hadn't even thought of necessarily. I thought, yes, 100%, because there's other worlds than these. There's all of these other, alternate dimensions. And it's even talked about at one particular point in the story as Scott going into the territories. Like, okay, Talisman, Black House reference. That's dope. I'm into it since I love both of those books. But King proposed something that I found rather fascinating. He was like, well, since Scott is this gifted character, and has this ability to, like jump between different worlds and things like that, go to this booyah moon, as he calls it. But then Amanda and him, Lisey's older sister, bonded and had this friendship really deeper than Lisey understood, because of the fact that Amanda was also somebody who had this kind of inherent ability. It's just, she called the place that she went to South Wind. And then we also get a little bit, with the Hollyhawks, and how, Lisey and Amanda and, the other sisters, like they like to pretend that they were pirates. And so just the power of imagination is significantly celebrated in this. And yet the thing that I'm jumping around the bush and not really getting to is that King is like, did this place already exist? Or because of this profound power that Scott Landon had, did he actually make this place himself? Was he like gifted with so much, and like touch, shine, whatever the hell you want to think it as, or something completely different, where he constructed this alternate world of sorts, with the aforementioned fairy forest and sweetheart trees, and the creepy laughers that are almost like hyenas that walk on fours most of the time, and they're humanoid, and yet they'll stand up and they'll look at you as if they're deciphering you like a real person would. And obviously the long boy being this aforementioned, like just towering, insanely frightening presence that you don't really get the proper revelation about and the distinction about what it really is until the end of the book. So I found the fact that King, because King did not say one way or the other, but he said that when he approached the miniseries, he kind of started thinking about that. He's like, well, I always thought it was another place, because he had just finished writing, just finished the Dark Tower series. And so he's like, well, maybe Scott is just, of such a powerful force with, the gifts that he was, and the gift and the curse, essentially, of the Landons, which is why him and Lisey never had any kids, because of the fact that Scott was just frightened about passing on the potential, what the heck did they call it? The bad gunky, which is, it's like you could always have that possibility because if I'm not mistaken, mental illness is a thing that can be hereditary and it can be passed along genetically, whether it's, I'm not sure if both dementia and Alzheimer's, because I know there's a very severe difference between the two, but just mental illness in general, if it can be, passed along to your progeny, to your kids and stuff. And so for that reason, Scott was like, nope, I don't want to wish that upon anyone. I don't want them to not only be teetering like he obviously was with what happens with his brother, just going full on raving mad. And then also the fate with the father that we don't find out until Lisey's story, the very last section of the book, and the true nature of what Scott had to nut up and do, which is just really nuts. And so, yeah, it's fascinatingly tragic in that regard. And so I thought that was incredibly interesting. But I mean, back to stuff about just their relationship in general. I like the little nuances of something like, hey, Lisey, is everything cool? And that, like, Scott would come home and he would just say that to his wife. It was their own little phrase of like, we're still in love. You're okay. Nothing has changed. Just something so simple. And the fact that King goes into extensive discussion about just those sort of things where they become very, I guess, steadfast and, just very reassuring in a lot of ways. And that's something that I really appreciate about this particular book, is because, having been in a few different, long-term relationships, including one currently, and then, the other one was like well over a decade. So it was, you really do get that sort of, I don't know, just calming presence, and little things like that, as mundane and unimportant as they may seem, they really go a long way. And as far as routine goes, and it may seem simplistic and unimportant, but I find those little moments really, really good. And yeah, the man had known how to get down, as Lisey mentions at one particular point about when she was first getting acquainted with this artist and getting acquainted with him, when he was really starting to hit. And so there is a lot of autobiographical stuff in this. And King can say all he wants, about the fact that he's like, no, this isn't like my life with Tabby. I'm not Scott Landon. And, Tabby isn't Lisey. But he's gone on record countless times to say Tabby has multiple sisters, and all of the parallels between the obsessive fandom, between various things. And I still... there's a lot of parallels, King. And I know that he always says, hey, you write what you know. It's the most important thing, whatever. And I'm not going to deny that. But yeah, so the framing, just to return to that really briefly. I know some people don't like the fact that it is very, flashback heavy in that regard. And I do feel like when the narrative is focusing specifically in the third act on just a more straightforward linear narrative, as opposed to just fleshing out the backstory of the blood pool, for instance, the backstory of, I do really appreciate the backstory of the mental illness of the father and the abusiveness. And that is where it does go on a bit long in Lisey, because Lisey is remembering Scott telling her these things. So it is kind of a story within a story sort of thing, which we all know how fond of that King is. And so I do find all of those, that very extensive segment in the center of the book, it goes on for a bit long, but I still find it relatively, captivating. It's honestly a lot of the stuff where they're at like the Antlers place, where I think it's when they're doing the honeymoon stuff. It's where he's first like really just going into in-depth detail about his childhood, not when you go into the actual childhood, like I was just talking about with his dad and with his older brother, and the actual nature of the bulls and these little scavenger hunts, which his older brother would orchestrate for him, and how much fun they had with those. It's the scenes that lead into those. And so, yeah, you've got Lisey remembering a previous time all these years ago, and then it's Scott in turn. So it is actually a story within a story within a story. But it's kind of comparable in that regard to, some of the stuff we get in Win Through the Keyhole, albeit that's with different characters by the time you get to the third story. But in any event, I've seen some people say they think it's a little convoluted. They feel like King did jump around a bit too much, and yet it's not bad. It just maybe drags the pacing of the story down. And this is one I believe that it's less than 500, if I remember correctly. Let's just double check, Steve. Yeah, just a little over 500. So yeah, 509, right on the money there. But yeah, I find the aspects of the creepy fandom to be interesting in this regard, but I still kind of feel like Finders Keepers did it a little bit better, with a little bit more straightforward of a narrative. So I will give it that. And once again, man, I hate having to retread back to the Apple TV Plus series, but I felt like the character of Dooley was actually a little bit more fleshed out and interesting, and had a little bit more to do in the Apple series. Yeah, he does some gnarly fucked up stuff, because just to give a little bit more of additional context, if you haven't read this book and if you're cool with spoilers, fine by me, whatever. That is of your prerogative, obviously. But so yeah, the cleaning out, and it's been 2 years since this insanely famous author died, and we get those aspects of the backstory of their love, and we get the brush with death that he had. But in the present time, Lisey is being pressured by Pitt, his alma mater, Scott's alma mater, her formerly famous husband and everything. That there are all of these lost works that need to be shown and need to be displayed, along with all of his other stuff. I think it's called Ike Comes Home is one of it's like this full 1,000+ page manuscript, like a full unreleased novel, plus all kinds of other essays and short stories and stuff like that. And that's where excuse me, that's where Lisey's story actually probably has the most similarity to Finders Keepers, in the fact that it's the obsessive aspect of how fervent fans of a particular author, they're like, there's all of these hidden gems, and you better believe King probably has a ton of them himself, all kinds of unreleased stuff. He's probably got at least a dozen like trunk books, very similar to when he finished up Blaze, or when he finally decided to release Pet Sematary or whatever. So that's where Finders Keepers, my favorite of the Bill Hodges trilogy, shares a lot of DNA with this. So that. Yeah, you've got this professor guy who is like just very adamantly wanting Lisey, or Yoko Landon, as she is called at one particular point, to just let this stuff go and let other people check it out. She has an aversion to it. She's still in the grieving process these years later, so that's obviously a thing and understandable. And the fact that the guy's kind of a schmuck, and I'm trying to remember what the hell she refers to him as. It's like the inkunks or something like that, an inkunk, but. That's where this guy hooks up with a deep space cowboy who is a big fan of an obsessive fan, obviously. And that's where the Dooley guy comes in. And he really only has those couple moments. He kills the cat, shoves it in the mailbox. And then when he attacks Lisey and makes his demands, which, yeah, dude from the university is like, I had no part in that, or I don't condone his actions, or whatever, or I didn't think he was serious. It's very half-hearted, kind of like Weasley wormy sort of explanation with regards to it. But yeah, it doesn't really give Dooley much to do beyond those two horrific bits, and then his untimely demise when he is pulled over into the Booyah Moon area, and she lures him, Lisey lures him into this trap with the help of Amanda. You also explore the mental illness aspect with Amanda just a little bit. She is grieving herself, but she's grieving for being dumped by this guy that she had been with for a number of years, that Lisey's sister. And so she goes like straight up catatonic after cutting herself up, put in a mental institution. And Lisey does have that very impactful moment where after she's figured out that she can jump back and forth between Booyah and our or her plane of existence, because I don't think this is Keystone, man. This isn't Keystone Earth. No, 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 no. But yeah, she's able to rescue her, and then they have their silly sister banter, which is kind of cute, kind of annoying at times. I mean, just a wee bit. I'm sure a lot of people would be annoyed by some stuff with both my little brother and myself. So yeah, well, both of my little brothers, I should specify. It is what it is. But yeah, more aspects about Scott that I found interesting. The fact that Lisey was his one and only, like the first one, or so she thought. I know people that have been known to lie about that sort of thing, but when you understand the character of Scott Landon, yeah, it makes a lot of sense that the first and last person that he ever, had sex with was her, and that I think adds a much more poignant punch to the love of your life if it's the only person you ever intimate in that regard with. Scott does say in some of the flashbacks, he's like, yeah, I've tried before and it just wasn't happening. And Lisey even reflects upon the fact that, yeah, it didn't, there were troubles, issues sometimes. And yeah, but they figured it out in the bedroom, and they had a lot of really sweet, loving, tender moments. And yet you don't really get the vibe that he was like this, like crazy sex crazed sort of relationship. You get the vibe that with the mental damage that had been incurred, on Scott, that he needed more so somebody to, like, give him ice when he was hot, the analogy back to that, and to just hold him and, love him and support him, especially mentally. He had all of those internal demons from, the brother going nuts, and then from eventually having to kill his own father when the craziness was about to overtake him. And yeah, that sort of support is really just incomparable. But also his fear of that long boy, the presence in this world, that whether he discovered it or whether he created it, like King implied, it's debatable. But yeah, he wouldn't even look in mirrors. He was very superstitious in that regard, and it's because of the fact that they say that mirrors are kind of little mini looks into other worlds. There's a lot of people who don't like to look in the mirrors and see themselves. I mean, Adam Driver, for God's sake, doesn't even watch his own goddamn movies because of the fact that he doesn't like to see himself on screen. He thinks it's weird. And so, to each their own, obviously, it is a thing, but yeah, as he says countless times to her, I was lost in the dark and you found me. So he was trying to just get his creativity to culminate. And when he meets, it was like the stars aligned when he met her, because he had like just sold that first book, if I remember, in the storytelling, and he had like his $5,000 advance for it or whatever. No paperback rights yet. Yeah. Sounds very, very back to what happened with Carrie. And yet he meets her and starts getting involved like right around the same time that his career was just starting to take off. And so that's where, yes, more parallels with King and Tabby. We know that there was a lot of struggle, financially, and with just the grind of trying to get your work out there and the difficulties that are associated with that. So yeah, King can deny it all he wants, but there is very much a lot of him in this particular story, and that's another reason why I appreciate it so much, I think. And yeah, so we eventually do, as I said, Amanda is rescued, and we have just Lisey basically understanding that it is both a blessing and a curse to have rediscovered all of these different things, most notably the ability that she had to, she really had to hone it in 96 after he was shot, because after he was shot, Scott is back in Booyah Moon, and he's like disappeared from his hospital room, and people are not really sure what the hell is going on. And so that was where, for the first time, Lisey had tapped into the fact that, yeah, she could jump back and forth herself. Like, she didn't need the power of Scott like the first time she had gone, where he just kind of pulled her over and pulled her through. She rediscovers it, and in 96, like, she saved him and pulled him back, and that's why he kept bringing that up, the fact that I was in the dark, and so on and so forth. Another line from this I really, really love, and it's reoccurring to me. And this is a good sort of rumination on how important it is for Lacey to eventually just kind of accept the fact that he is gone and that she does need to eventually move on with her life. And I thought there's this line where King talks about living in the past takes up a surprising amount of a person's time. I find that sentiment to be incredibly profound. When I had my like decade plus relationship and all the sad ups and downs of that, but there is most definitely where you're just kind of pining and reflecting, and you do have to eventually, get your eyes straight ahead. You have to start looking forward as opposed to just kind of wallowing in the muck and the self-reflection, because that's where most of your time will end up going, is just thinking about all of these older things. And I feel like there's a lot of really good advice in that particular sentiment, because I've always appreciated that. And another one, every long marriage has two hearts, one light and one dark. And it's because of the fact that things won't always be perfect, and whether it's struggles that are out of your control, whether it's personal demons like Scott had from all the crazy shit that happened when he was a kid, or whether it is just internal tension amongst the two people. It could, like, these sort of things can come from all angles. And it's, once again, like I said, it's not all going to be just perfect, ray of sunshine all the goddamn time. And I think that is one of the reasons why so many people do give up on the marriage or some sort of long lasting dedication. And but once again, to each their own in that regard. It totally is what it is. If you are of the ilk that is just like, that's why I say okay. So let's jump back to the chat real quick, because we are approaching almost an hour. And I've said a good chunk of what I had to say. There's still a few other bits and two passages in particular here that I wanted to touch upon. But let's see what everybody else has said in the meantime. Okay. The hardcover is the one. Thanks. Okay. Saw that already. Jim Curris says bag of okay. To Jim Curris. That's right. That's Lou saying Bag of Bones is the flip side of Lacey's story in B.O.B. Its wife who had said, okay, died. Yep. Okay. Fuego, not so much. Yep. That's right. And yes, that's right. Forgot about that. King actually does one of the few that he has narrated himself as far as the audiobook goes. And, I know some people do not like hearing Sai King read, but I finally tracked down, because these were all re-recorded, guys. The first three books King had originally read himself of the Dark Tower series, and they had put them in these cassette collections, because this was even before CDs, man. Yeah, the box is not in the most desirable condition, but all the cassettes sound great, because it's very tough to track down, even on YouTube and the internet and stuff like that, places where I found King reading the first Dark Tower book, but I couldn't find the Drawing of the Three. I couldn't find the Wastelands. And so I tracked those down on the eBays. And I was pretty stoked about that. Okay, so what else we got? Okay, but the Bag of Bones miniseries is terrible. Yep, I completely concur. And I really like Pierce Brosnan, too. He's in the Bag of Bones miniseries that Mick Garris did. Tommy Knockers is my least favorite King book. Okay. And I really like the Tommy Knockers. I don't love the Tommy Knockers, but I find things to appreciate it. Okay. Okay, so this is a different name. BL Salt One. Hey Fuego, I'm a longtime lurker on your channel. Just wanted to say thank you for the past few years of awesome King content. I read Lacey's story earlier this year. I loved the vibe of Booyah Moon. Yeah, and it's beautifully done in a miniseries. They captured it from a visual standpoint splendidly, in my estimation. So I greatly appreciate the kind words. Say thank you. We are actually nearly at 300 episodes of Hail to Stephen King. Right around the new year is when we are going to be hitting that numero, which is pretty exciting. So, yep, I love the whole idea of a story pool. Yep, and King definitely uses that as a interesting exploration point about the fact that, yes, every creative person does have this pool that they go and, they dip their toe in, they wade into it, and sometimes they drown in it. There's a sentiment later in the book where he mentions that, and I find that really fascinating. And the fact that, yes, sometimes the pursuit of our creativity and the obsession that often is associated with it can consume us to a dangerous degree. And I find that sort of exploration to be very, very intriguing as well. Okay, Rodin Wrestling. Living in the past and playing what ifs with my life are one of my biggest regrets and hardest things to battle. Yeah, you're preaching to the choir, yo. That is most definitely, especially as we age and we think about windows of opportunity. I'm here in Arizona, and I know some people make fun of me about it because I'm like all metal and all that shit. But I love Jimmy Eat World, man, and they're a hometown band and everything, and they have a line in one of their songs where they say, "Windows open and close. That's just how it goes," and they hits the nail right on the head, man. It truly, truly does. Because all too often, if you don't seize those opportunities, whether it's something job related, or whether it's with a significant other, or it's somebody that you just kind of F things up with romantically. I mean, yeah, it is very much a thing. Super profound, says JP. Now, Carl O'Connor chimes in with King has a thing for cats. Yeah, he truly does. Pet Cemetery, Sleepwalkers, and the mailbox in this one, and so on. Yeah, well, I mean, although he loves his corgis too. So I don't know. And he's put corgis in his stories as well. Like, Molly, the thing of evil, as he puts on his Twitter all the damn time. Because that's right, King left Facebook and Insta because Insta is owned by Zucker and Facebook. Anyway, Zucker fucker, whatever. Okay, this channel deserves more recognition. Hey, I greatly appreciate it. We saw a significant amount of growth in 2017 for King coverage, because that was the King-a-sons, as I dubbed it at the time, and I had just started Hail to Stephen King around then. That's when it came out. That was the same year that we had the terrific Gerald's Game by Mike Flanagan. Same year that we had 1922 on Netflix, which was great. So I always say, unfortunately, it was the same year that we had that Dark Tower movie, and we also had The Mist on Spike, which was just bleh. But in any event, we still chug-a-lug along, and we have been at this now since early 2014. So we will be celebrating 8 years of the horror show very, very soon, which is incredibly exciting. So any place on the internet where I can easily find all the 90s miniseries. I mean, really, what I would say is jump on your Google and search for a specific one. I know the entire Storm of the Century is actually on YouTube because King tweeted about it himself. That was a little while ago, so I would hope it's still up there. But yeah, a lot of them you can find in varying video qualities on Vimeo and most notably YouTube. So yeah, I would say just Google and search and see what you can find. And I cannot recommend Storm of the Century enough because damn is it good. That is one of my absolute favorites. Okay, the awesome name once again, Supernatural Slytherin. Yes, I really love how King makes you feel for Scott, what he had to do as a child. Also, how he showed the love Paul and Scott had for each other, and how even his father loved him the best he could. That is segueing into one of my last things that I wanted to mention here. So a monster is not incapable of love. Something that King says at the very end of the book when Lisey discovers Scott's final story. And so when she's going through that, and it's where she finally gets that revelation, because Scott didn't like talking about his upbringing, his childhood, his past, his history to anybody. Like, he kept it very like to the cuff, close to the chest, whatever the hell that term is. And or close to the vest, I think, whatever. But yeah, it was shrouded in secrecy. And it's something that's touched upon in the book a few times, is the fact that Scott, when he would conduct interviews, when he would do these speaking engagements, whatever, like, excuse me, after an hour of just, yappy, yapping, yabba dabba doo. But yeah, the fact that he allowed his vulnerability to be shown, and that he opened up, to Lisey, shared his secrets and his sadness with her. And I know people have mixed feelings about Roger Waters, from formerly of Pink Floyd, the writer of The Wall. He's one of my favorite creatives of all time, a real asshole in a lot of ways from what I understand, but some of the art that he's created has very much spoke to me. And there's a line from The Final Cut, which is the last Pink Floyd album that he was involved with. It's essentially an epilogue to The Wall, and I adore The Final Cut. But the title track on that album, there is a point where Roger Waters sings, "And if I showed you my dark side, showed you my weak side, what would you do?" And I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I felt like that is probably the way Scott Landon as a character, felt, where he's like, because even the Blood Bowl thing, where for the first time he has like this big fight with Lisey, and it obviously is reflective of the abuse that he was in, that he experienced, with his father and stuff. The fact that he like cuts himself up the way he does, and yet his father trying to keep the demons in check with the cutting himself up as well. Like, man, it just to expose that vulnerability. There is something very demasculating about not appearing to be just very tough and macho and all that shit. And so yeah, it takes, I think, a special significant other, for a man, or for whatever you identify as. And I yeah, there's just something very sweet and soothing about just being able to discuss any sort of really impactful, crazy, traumatic stuff that you've encountered yourself. And so anyway, I have most definitely veered from the point, but yeah, a monster is not incapable of love. The point of that line being the fact that Scott, with his father, especially in those final days after the death of, after the horrible death of having to to blast Paul, his brother, and kill him because he was so overtaken with the bad gunky. Um, he said it's very much it's something you see in abusive relationships all the time. Okay, it's where, okay, you feel the nastiness that person is bringing upon you, and then when they're sweet with you, and Scott even says in that final story of his, he's like, it made when my father said nice things to me or was kind to me, it made it that much more just significant. And yeah, it's a hallmark of those sort of dynamics and relationships, for better or for worse. But you know, I still contend that, yeah, there's very evil people out there, but even them are like shades of gray to a degree. I mean, God's sake, a sick fuck like Gacy, right, was going and entertaining kids in the hospital as a clown. So it's very strange, and it's something that I don't know if I will ever like completely wrap my head around as a person, because I didn't really study extensive human psychology or anything of that nature. But yeah, it's something interesting. And so the last bit before I go into just these few quotes, and let's just jump over here really quick, since I've got two different passages that I wanted to read, and this is one that I found interesting. So this is in the third act of the book. There's only about 100 or so pages left at this particular point, and this is after Lisey has broken Amanda out of the mental place after pulling her from, well, Booyah Moon, or what she called South Wind. Drastically different sort of places, but that's where. So Amanda was trapped, and you know what? I'm glad that this jogged my memory about this, because there is a dynamic in the book where they don't specify why, but when you are jumping over, there's instances where certain things can travel with you, like most of your clothes, or there's a bell that Scott brings over that was at the restaurant that Lisey was working at when she was younger, when they first were dating. And yet there's other instances where they're like, no, your shoes aren't going to go over. Some of the like lenses and the night vision goggles that Dooley is wearing. Like, so what gave the significance of what could travel over along with you and what couldn't is, like, man, Scott was even trying to bring over his father after he had to kill him, and he couldn't do that. So yes, I know that's kind of nitpicking, and yet King didn't really give a distinction as to why some things and some people could go over and some couldn't. Was it like a strength sort of thing? Because he does talk about how it is kind of like flexing a muscle and then training it and just getting yourself more adept and adapted at that sort of crossover. I don't, anyway, but so after Amanda has been broken out, this is the part. that I wanted to go to. Okay, where are we at? Where are we at? Where are we at? Okay. I think most kids have a place they go to when they're scared or lonely or just plain bored. They call it Neverland or the Shire, Booyah Moon if they've got big imaginations and make it up for themselves. Most of them forget, though. The talented few, like Scott, harness their dreams and turn them into horses. Thought that was really cool. You're pretty talented yourself. You're the one who thought up Southwind, weren't you? The girls back home played that for years. I wouldn't be surprised if there were girls out on the Sabbathus Road still playing a version of it. Amanda laughed and shook her head. People like me were never meant to really cross over. My imagination was just big enough to get me in trouble. Amanda, that's not true. Yes, Amanda said, it is. The loony bins are full of people like me. Our dreams harness us, and they whip us with soft whips. Oh, lovely whips. And we run, always in the same place. Because the ship, Lisey, the sails never open, and the ship never weighs its anchor. When you think about stuff you would have liked to have done, past missed opportunities, things of that nature, you definitely get that from Amanda. But there is there's an essence of positivity though in just her vibrance of life once Lisey actually gets her out, and just the banter between the two of them. It's cute, it's quirky, it's amusing. It's something that I did really enjoy. But that line hits hard, yo. Gets you in the feels. Very, very, very much so. Okay. Okay, that was super profound, says JP. King has a thing for cats. Yep, no, that's right. I saw that already. Any place on... Yep, I mentioned that. Sorry, guys. Just making sure I'm properly up to date. Okay, Supernatural Slytherin says, yes, I really love... Oh, nope, I think I had that part as well. Oh, Francis Chainsaw Gremp. Greetings. Chainsaw, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, coming to your Netflix next February. Okay. Run Wrestling says, read. Okay, read Revival, Sleeping Beauties and The Shining, just read. Okay, then you have to understand the context, obviously, Fuego. Read Revival, Sleeping Beauties and The Shining just in this year. Like videos like this, where I can go and see what an avid fan thinks and dissects it for me. Well, so I've been passionate about, and humbled and honored for anybody who takes the time to check these out. That's always been, something, regardless of how big or small the numbers may be. It is not something that I take lightly. But I take this stuff I take Stephen King very seriously, but I just don't take myself very seriously because life is too short for that. That's what I contend. 11/22/63 has to be my favorite of all time, though. Oh boy, well, there's an interesting announcement coming. That is the case. Beautiful passage. Okay, so the last bit that I wanted to mention here is it's kind of a approach to writing that. So it's kind of King in his own way, going after some of his critics and most notably maybe some editors and some agents and stuff like that, where that there is some criticism perhaps of a story dynamic, and they're like, that's not believable, that would never happen. And you're like, well, I'm writing fiction, for God's sake, and in King's case, you're writing genre fiction a lot of the time, and I mean, this is a mashup of, there's a little bit of horror. I don't know if I would say sci-fi, but there's definitely a fantasy aspect to it, and there is a love story aspect to it. There's dramatic elements, as far as interpersonal things within a family. So once again, it's another King story with a lot of moving pieces, big time sort of stuff in that regard. And yet there is this line in the book that I find very funny. Reality is Ralph. And that was apparently something that Scott Landon said to his editor at one particular point, where he was given notes about one of his books, and his editor was like, yeah, you need to change this because this doesn't make sense, or this is unbelievable, or whatever explanation you want to give. And he's like, reality is Ralph. And his editor is like, what the hell is that? And like, who is Ralph, or what's going on? And I think this is actually, King put this in because it was something that happened in real life, actually. And so Ralph was apparently this dog that went missing, like on a family trip or something. I'm trying to remember the specifics, but like missing hundreds or thousands of miles from home. And it had been gone for like 3 years. And yet miraculously, the dog shows up back at home. Yeah, it was worse for wear. It was all grimy and gross and dirty, lost collar, whatever. But Ralph somehow found its way back home across the entire country. And I love the concept of that because I think it really ties in with that old cliched phrase, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. Stranger Than Fiction, also one of the best Bad Religion albums, by the way. Great song, too. But yeah, reality is Ralph. It's something that apparently Scott just went back to quite often, where he was just like, yo, like sometimes it doesn't need to be completely explained. And maybe that is King being like, yo, I'm not going to explain why some objects will go over the Booyah Moon and some won't. You know, it's like, it's Ralph, dude, whatever. Just go with the flow. I don't have to spoon feed you everything and, give you an explanation. And also the fact that the inexplicable, the unbelievable does happen in our day-to-day lives a lot of the time. And, how, as they say in the book, they're like, yeah, why does some drunken kid fall off a 3-story building and he only breaks his wrist, and he gives a few other examples too. But that sort of thing where it just does not make any goddamn sense, that is reality is Ralph. And it's a phrase that I am definitely going to remember from this particular revisit. But since we are at almost 85 minutes, yeah, we've been going for a while, and I do have some other things to attend to on this fine day in December. And I also have to reveal what the book of the month for December is for Hail to Stephen King. But this last passage, which is it's right near the end of the book. It's another bit that I found very interesting. And this is just some musing from Lisey herself. And it's after the Dooley has been thwarted and chomped up by the monster or whatever the hell and all that different stuff. But it's where a song comes on the radio, and there's an interesting aspect about this where they bring up The Last Picture Show a whole lot, and that is a movie that I hadn't even watched for the first time until earlier in the pandemic. And so I watched it last year. Young ass Jeff Bridges. Oh, goodness, I'm trying to remember the name of Blondie, who is just gorgeous in that movie. Anyway, if you've never seen The Last Picture Show, it is a fantastic coming of age. It was very edgy for its time, and rightfully so. And it's very good, but it was like Scott's favorite movie. He was like, it's the greatest movie aside from Citizen Kane, as he says at one particular point. But so there's a lot of Hank Williams, which is in that film, from what is mentioned. And so... okay, let's get to it. Lisey turned on the radio and wasn't a bit surprised to get old Hank singing honky tonkin'. She sang along low. She knew every word. This did not surprise her either. Some things you never forget. She had come to believe that the very things the practical world dismissed as ephemera. Yeah, I'm totally butchering it. Things like songs and moonlights and kisses were sometimes the things that lasted the longest. They might be foolish, but they defied forgetting. And that was good. That was good. And this has been a good discussion, everybody. I am so very excited for anybody who tuned in for the live broadcast. I know it's tough here in the middle of the week. Cecil and I are having discussions about, in the new year, moving the book of the month to a time on the weekends, like maybe a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, something of that particular nature. I think we are still going to maintain Tower Tuesday for the Stephen King episodes proper. But I just think that for a live audience, the weekend makes a significant amount of more sense. And so we're not 100% decided, but I will most definitely keep everybody posted. But at least for next month, I guess it will be for the beginning of next year, we will most definitely at least be doing on the first Tuesday. Sorry, I'm checking the calendar, everybody, just so y'all know. So at least at the beginning of the new year in January, the new book of the month for December will be discussed on January 4th. So Tuesday, January 4th, Tower Tuesday. It could be the last live show. I will keep everybody posted if that is the case. But it will be discussing, for its 10th anniversary, none other than what some argue is maybe his greatest work in some ways. I mean, as far as non-horror work, it's arguable. Bammer. Yeah. This book is one that Sai King had been hinting at wanting to write for the longest time. He talked about, like, he mentioned in so many books, novel and short stories both, like the fact that there's all of those conspiracy theories about, did Lee Harvey Oswald do this, and who the other shooters, that blah blah blah. It's obviously something that captivated everybody of the generation, that, like, for us, it's, unfortunately, at least here in the States, for us, unfortunately, it's all kinds of 9/11 conspiracy sort of stuff. But for everybody from King's generation, it was most definitely, how far did what happened on, November 22nd, 1963, almost, yeah, God, almost 60 years ago now. It's really nuts. But this is a book that he had hinted at wanting to write for the longest time, because he had just gone back to that subject matter over and over and over. And this book is incredible. It's probably in my top 10. I'm trying to remember where I put it when I did like my full King countdown, but it's a book that, yes, it's a little more long-winded in this nature than I feel like some of the stuff they did in the miniseries was good as far as trimming the fat. Now, the Bill LaFoyle, the character, I don't know. I had issues with that, but the fact that this is celebrating 10 years now is really awesome. I cannot recommend this book enough. And on January 4th, 2022, it might be the final installment of this on Tuesday, at least as far as a live show goes, because I still really want to try to push it to the weekends, because I think that would be better. But yeah, this book is just so awesome. Love Jake as a character. Yeah, he is terrific. And so come along with me and check out The Brilliance if you have read it before and you just want to jump on and have some palaver, or read it for the first time. Can't recommend it enough. So I extend a grande gracias. I have been Jaime Fuego, and you can find moi on all social media sectors like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube. I've got some Christmas coverage on my separate solo channel, in Fuegotainment. That's going to be hitting soon. Going to revisit some stuff like Batman Returns, perhaps Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, but then also talk about some newer things like that Home Alone, or Home Sweet Home Alone, whatever the hell it's called. 8-Bit Christmas also, which I watched recently on HBO Max, and that film was a total delight. Obviously, a like, a share, and a subscribe here on The Horror Show means a hell of a lot, everybody. And once again, thank you so very much, everybody who shared some of the palaver here live, and for all of those who are checking it out after the fact. If you want further palaver, got the Hail to Stephen King Facebook group, over 1,000 strong on there, and all kinds of great discussion. We do a kind of Freak Out Friday sort of thing where I pull back the constraints of discussion, where it's like, okay, it doesn't have to just be the King family, because we do also talk Joe Hill there, little Owen, little Tabby. But yes, on Fridays, we allow some broader discussion, which is really great. Shout out to my buddy Lou once again for hopping in and being a part of the discussion in the chat. It means a lot, man. I'm going to send you a Twitter message to see what the rest of your December is looking like, mate. And yeah, everybody, I just, once again, greatly appreciate everyone, and hope you have happiest of holidays, whatever you celebrate or the lack thereof. I hope it's a wondrous December for all of you. You will see me next Tuesday with a new video, and until then, when the Wheel of Ka comes around once more, hasta luego, sin amigos. Constant readers and viewers alike, say thank you. I am hoping that we have been well met, and that we will share more of this palaver sooner rather than later. And until then, remember to stay scared and read Stephen King. Yeah, both of these bad boys. Shiny. Ooh, gotta love the lighting, right? Appreciate everyone. I will see y'all next Tuesday on a Tuesday.